Good morning, everyone, and thank you for setting aside part of your day to attend this webinar. My name is Rick Riddle, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Codero. I've been developing and building, growing, and mentoring sales and marketing people, processes, and protocols for more than 25 years. And I've been delivering webinars like the one you'll see today, even before they were called webinars. So this is the sixth and final installment of our training series on the disaster recovery as a service and cloud backup solutions that are available exclusively to you as an RLEC partner. By the way, if you've missed any of the previous webinars, would like a refresher, or would like to just share with others in your organization, I'll provide some details on where to find those archived elements at the close of today's session. Now, during today's webinar, I'll introduce you to some tools and techniques for selling in a way that makes it easier for your buyers to buy from you. It's designed to build confidence when making that initial contact with a potential customer. You'll find that the material is probably different than most other that you will encounter, because what I'll be offering are just quite simply simple questioning concepts that work with you and your natural personality. I'm not here to turn anyone into a fast-talking, smooth-walking salesperson. Even if you don't consider yourself to be a salesperson, I'm sure that you'll find a nugget or two that'll help you engage others in a smoother conversation about your business. So let's get going. So there's no doubt that business today is more complex than ever before, and it's unlikely to get any easier. Customers struggle with managing complexity. Our own organizations have many of the same issues. Even our own jobs are complex today. We're pulled in multiple directions. We have conflicting goals, never enough time, and then, of course, there's those pesky prospects and customers. So I guess it's a good thing that we have all the experts and consultants, solution providers, and trainers to help us deal with that complexity, right? We've got tools, techniques, checklists, processes, buzzwords, gimmicks, flowcharts, all aimed to help us deal with the complexity of selling. And then there's so much to remember. Which methodology should I apply? Which is the best? Sandler sales, solution selling, Miller-Heiman spin selling, customer-centric selling, insight selling, challenger sales? Should I be selling solutions, being provocative or consultative? Should I be solution selling, relationship selling, selling DeVito, business value selling, trust-based selling, or just managing a transaction? In fact, am I better off even with a methodology or a process at all? Am I selling a product, a system, solution, or is it a vision? What about services? Who am I dealing with? Are they the economic buyer, the technical buyer? Is she a talker or a blocker? Maybe she's an influencer. No, I think she's just a recommender or perhaps a coach. My manager said to find the decision maker and isolate the vetoer. When I talk to an ISFJ or an ENTP, which neurolinguistic approach should I use? Now, I know I'm supposed to be social selling, blogging, tweeting, Facebooking, linking in, building communities, tribes, collaborating, networking. But how do I do that in this account-based everything selling world that we're in today? Well, at least I've got marketing, right? So marketing is there to help. We've got sales enablement now. We've got playbooks, competitive battle cards. We've got marketing qualified leads, sales accepted leads, sales qualified leads, lead scoring. We've got campaigns and nurturing and content management. We have ideal prospect personas. We're chatting, we're jiving, we're yammering. And as a manager, I've got a lot to figure out too. What kind of salespeople do we need? Hunters, farmers, account managers? Maybe I need business developers or prospectors. Maybe I need challengers or problem solvers, relationship sellers. No, I need rainmakers, right? Rainmakers. Do I need inside sales, outside sales, or both? Do I outsource lead gen, or do I do that myself? What about channel partners or aggregators? Do I have the right measures, assessments, benchmarks, KPIs, and best practices? Is at least one of them a third-order complex equation? And if so, should I hire a business analyst too? Guys, I can go on and on and on and on. This is like a Steve Jobs slide right here. One slide and do a whole webinar, but I think you get the point. Don't get me wrong, by the way. Much of what I just talked about has value, and at least in provoking new thinking and different approaches. However, introducing more complexity doesn't help us get new customers. And I know from years of accumulated initiatives and programs and approaches and methodologies, I know they take their toll. Trust me, I know. Today's customers are confused, and quite honestly, they're numb and they're worn out. They want to deal with people they trust who are prepared and don't waste their time. Simply put, customers don't want to be sold. They want to buy. And that's the focus of today's webinar. How to be curious enough, just enough to ask good questions that will make people want to buy from you. In fact, you can boil it down into just 4 simple bullet points. And at the end of our session today, I'll give them to you. But first, let me tell you a story. Well, it's more like a tale than a story. It's a tale of 2 Wheelers. There's these 2 guys named Wheeler. One's Earl and one's Elmer. So what's so interesting about that, Rick, you ask? Well, let me take you back to a time when one Wheeler knew a lot of people in a lot of high places, and one just knew how to sell. It was 1965, and someone is getting sold to. A very large opportunity, a major prospect, huge, huge outcome. It was Earl versus Robert. I won't give you the whole story. It takes about 14 years. But ultimately, the big prospect buys Robert, not Earl. So everything turned out good, right? No. Actually, worse than that. Because Robert's solution, the one that the big prospect bought, failed miserably. Earl's solution ultimately was implemented, but it was too late. It didn't save the big prospect, and it certainly didn't save Earl. Who was the prospect? It was LBJ. The time was the Vietnam War, and we had to do something to get out of the horrible stalemate that we were in. And the 2 guys that were selling the solutions were Earl Wheeler, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense. We went with McNamara, then came the Tet Offensive, and we all know what happened after that. So what ultimately happened to the guys? Well, it really just boiled down to the fact that Earl Wheeler couldn't sell like another guy named Elmer Wheeler. Earl Wheeler was educated at the United States Military Academy at West Point. He served in 2 wars honorably. He was one of the highest decorated 4-star generals in our country's history. Now, Elmer, the other Wheeler, he went to Utica College. He lost his job one day as a newspaper reporter. His boss came to him and said, "Hey, I got to tell you, Elmer, we don't need reporters anymore. Times are tough. What we need are salespeople." Elmer's response, "Okay, so now I'm a salesperson." Elmer Wheeler then spent the rest of his career famously testing words and phrases and good questions to help him sell better. And that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about not just the new normal, but we're going to talk about how to build a quick, proven sales process to help you. How to engage and build a better rapport with people that you've never met before, but you've got to sell something to them. How to apply those in a good, engaging conversation. How to really understand what the buyer's going through. And if you can understand better what's going on from them, then you can identify the better opportunities, and more importantly, the ones to not pursue. So before we begin, though, I want to give you guys all an opportunity. I like to think that when I do a webinar or I do a training session that it pays to participate. So here's what I want you to do. So over on the right side of your screen, you see a section there with a little arrow pointing to the right reading chat. And if you click in that chat button, you can write something. And you can write something that I will see instantly. And so I want to give you an opportunity to participate and get paid for it. So get ready. Have Google up if that's what you need, or maybe you just simply know the answer. I'm going to ask you a question, and then we're going to reward the person that gets the answer to me the fastest. Are you ready? So here's the question. In the late 1800s, Clark Stanley was a notorious seller of what 2-word product, which he advertised as a curative liniment? I'll give you guys about 60 seconds. I'll go in silent mode and let you guys chat to me your answer. Okay, I've got a few answers in. Are you guys ready for the answer? So the answer to what Clark Stanley was selling back in the 1800s that he advertised as a curative liniment was snake oil, a term I'm sure many of you have heard throughout your life, either in sales or marketing or even being a customer. By the way, an irony in this whole episode is that after about 20 years of Mr. Stanley selling snake oil, the newly formed Food and Drug Administration shut him down. They didn't shut him down because it wasn't a curative liniment. They shut him down because there wasn't even an ounce of snake oil in snake oil. It was mostly mineral oil. So let's go on, but first, congratulations, Mr. King. A $50 Amazon gift card is headed your way. Quick to the punch, good answer. So you might be thinking that you can cherry pick some of the things that might perform miracles for you, a one-size-fits-all solution or maybe even a magic bullet, but I tend to look at things in a different way. And I do hope that you get tips from today's session, but much more important to me is that you learn a process, not something that might work just here or there, but instead I'd rather provide you with a process that works in almost every single environment and almost every single interaction that you're having. Okay, so this, by the way, is how you believe the world sees you, especially customers and prospects. But this is how you look to them. And how do you differentiate yourself and your solution when to the prospect it all looks the same to them? Why should anyone buy from you and not your competitor? It's not what you're selling or even how you sell it. It's mostly how you relate to and engage with others. And if you're more than 30 years old, you'll remember the days when marketing helped create awareness with trade shows and billboards and various media and direct mail. Then it was up to the salesperson to call the prospect and get that conversation going. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that buyers ever really liked dealing with salespeople back then, but a buyer did need a salesperson to share industry best practices, dig in with them to diagnose business problems, map out a thoughtful evaluation process, and potentially even architect a solution for them. Well, today that's all changed. And it's not that salespeople don't still play a critical role. Rather, it's that marketing now plays much of that role that sales used to because the internet has fundamentally changed buyer behavior. Buyers today don't start by picking up the phone and calling a salesperson. They don't discuss a challenge they're facing with a salesperson. They start with Google. From there, they read white papers, they watch videos, attend webinars, read case studies, compare websites, and even check references, all before narrowing down which vendor they're going to evaluate. In today's world of savvy digital buyers, the power has changed. In fact, your buyer, for the most part, is shopping without you. They have more information, they have unlimited access, and often in real time, about your solution, the competitive landscape that you work in, your products, the history of your company. They can even research you on places like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or wherever you are. They can go down and find everything they want to about you even before you're talking to them. Pretty scary. In fact, that new social network friend is more of a trusted resource on what you have to offer than any of your marketing campaigns. Like it or not, we're all faced with the same challenge, the shift from the selling process to the buying process. By the time a buyer finally meets with one of your salespeople, or you, their mind is mostly made up, right or wrong. Oh, and guess what? The information they're armed with, the facts they bring to the conversation, may be completely wrong. Your job now is to carefully discern which information is correct and which is not, and then carefully unwind and reset those expectations. Mike Bosworth in Solution Selling used to call it the most important part of a selling engagement, which is called re-engineering the vision of someone. Wow. I mean, we thought that was really cool in the mid-90s, but can you imagine trying to re-engineer anyone's vision today and what they want? Practically impossible. In fact, this is the apex of today's sales conversation, this part right here. If you begin with a pitch, you lose. If you start with features and functions, you're out. If you're not asking good questions at the very beginning of your pursuit engagement, your odds of winning are slim. there's a whole new world of selling going on. In terms of qualification and selection and the conversation itself, the old way, the client, the prospect, they told you what their need was. Then we had to identify which people were the right people to be talking with, and then we had to demonstrate the value all to them. That's completely flipped on its ear today. The client, for the most part, is in some state of transition, and often a state of freaky transition, total uncertainty. You've got to find the one person in the organization who's more open to change than who has the money, and you've got to disrupt the way they think and even the way they assume the thinking of their own business. This is what it looks like. If you could take all of the shoppers for all of the solutions right now and build a pie chart, it would look like this. Only 3% of anyone in any organization is actively looking for something in the way of a new solution, right? How scary is that? Because most salespeople are cold calling and trying to find these people. We're trying to find the 3% that are looking for something today. Are you trying to change today? Do you want something today? Is now the right time? Is now the right time? Well, guess what? If you are talking to that 3%, they're probably talking to not only 2 or 3 other people, they're talking to the very person who architected the solution. So there's another 40% that are starting to realize they have a problem, and the largest majority, it has a total latent pain in the back of their brain. So if you are not actively engaged with that other 97% and you're in front of them, making yourself available, and in fact, if you're not in that area that's involved in their buying process, then you're going to lose. Again, this is what their process looks like. This is what we have to market to. They go from being perfectly fine to being totally freaked out. I've got to solve a problem. I've got to talk to people. I've got to find providers. So if you're not teaching them right now about what you do and how you can help them while they're learning about what may or may not be a problem for them down the road, you're going to be in tough straits. This is how it used to look like, by the way, in selling. I know this because this is how I was taught to go hire salespeople. I hired them all to look the same, act the same, be the same, look the same, act the same, be the same, look the same, act the same, be the same. And our customers got the same conversations. It's no longer like that. We're not in control. The messaging that used to just be one solid message and lives out there for years, at Ford, job is important. At General Motors, it's TQO. All these different things, they had messages that lasted for 3 or 4 years. Now we're talking to many people at the same time. We're constantly interrupting them. You better be making sure that you understand that you're not in control anymore. Your buyers are. They're everywhere all the time. They often find you and tell you what they think is wrong in their world. The sales and marketing landscape has certainly altered some of the more traditional roles that we even have in sales and marketing. The sales process itself is totally expedited now, with clients and prospects having better access to information on companies and products and you. By the time they make contact with you, much of the foundational steps of the whole process is over. It's already been laid in their minds. A major change in this relationship is also happening between sales and marketing. Salespeople must be much more informed than what marketing is doing. In their correspondences, as a salesperson, you have to know how your marketing team is interacting with your prospects and which points are sticking and standing out with them. And then you have to adjust accordingly. There's no longer this one-size-fits-all mentality. We've absolutely got to go from all these things I learned many years ago. I have to solve problems. I have to sell. I have to always be closing. I have to meet and exceed needs. I have to react to what they want, blah, blah, blah. No way. It's all about managing everything now, managing change and expectations, managing the communication loop, managing the whole relationship between us and them and their team. Okay, so right now you're probably saying, all right, Rick, I get it, makes sense, I hear you, but we're just a small company. We're in a small rural area with not the same resources and not the same budget as a lot of people around us. So how can I do all that, and how can I do what the big guys are doing? Well, I'm sure that your owner, your manager, your CEO, anyone that you've had more than a 5-minute conversation with your company will tell you we're all in sales. All of us, all the time. It doesn't matter if you're answering the phone, driving the boat, laying the anchor, delivering anything. We are all in sales all the time. We are the brand of our company. In fact, oftentimes we're the most important brand, and oftentimes the most important conversations aren't happening in a sales environment. that might be happening in line at the grocery store, at church, or at some barbecue. We're all in sales. And so this new normal of selling no longer looks like what's on the left. It's no longer about salespeople and process and our business hours of 8 to 5 and our defined way we go to market. It's about everyone. It's about how they buy, the way they like to buy. It's on their schedule. It's changing, by the way, because it's buyer-driven and because they get new information in such rapid fashion. It's dynamic and changing all the time. And it's no longer about a transaction. You better have an engaged interaction with your prospects and then your customers and then your longtime customers all the time, and it better feel the same to them all the time. Now, I'm not going to spend a long time on this slide. I'm making it available to all of you guys afterwards. And I'm also not saying this as a retort to everything I've just said. You do have to have some process to get from A to B, or A to Z in this case. You have to have a way that your conversations, your interactions, your marketing and demand generation and your sales and your customer service all flow. So this is a typical lead generation waterfall in today's world. On the right, you see prospects at the top of the proverbial funnel. By the way, I don't think funnels look like that anymore. I think they look more like a bow tie. I think by the time you have a client, they open up a whole new funnel of opportunities for you, and you have to manage it all over again. But suffice to say that for this one slide, we're going to do it like this. But you've got prospects that are making their way to their own decision process. So the things that you have to do over on the left to that and with that prospect, and to make sure that they are marketing qualified. Do they know what we do? Do they know who they are? Do they want more information? Are they ready to have an appointment, a conversation with us? So you have to verify and confirm all those interests. And then ultimately, it's an opportunity for you to win or lose. And if you win it, you win it. If you don't win it, do you put that back to marketing and continue marketing to them? Absolutely you do. And ultimately, you have a client to win or lose. So this is another webinar in and of itself. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of this and you understand that if you don't have some sort of a lead to revenue waterfall description, it can't exist in your head. It's got to exist somewhere, and you got to build your processes and your protocols. Your protocols meaning if you have an email service provider like MailChimp or Constant Contact, you have a marketing automation platform like Act-On or Marketo. They're very expensive. If you don't and can't afford those, then I would recommend this is a good time to be talking to our partners at Plus One Strategies. So if you're not and cannot do it yourself, make sure you reach out to them. They can do all this for you, and they can do it on the ground in your world with your prospects. Likewise, you have to have a way to consistently and in a repeatable fashion engage with people that you're selling to. And more importantly, memorialize where you are in the conversation. I know because in 1999 I was part of the early group that worked with Mark Benioff when Salesforce was first being defined. I had 124 salespeople at my company, and we built out the sales process, by the way, that still exists. If you are a Salesforce customer and you buy Salesforce, your pipeline milestones and markers are still there as they were once in 1999. Identify, investigate, qualify, prospect, blah, 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 blah. That's a long process. 5%, 10%, it's 12%, it's 15%. No, it's not. You're only doing one of three things. If you're talking to the right person, if you find that ideal prospect and you're having a conversation with them, you are qualifying them in or out. And by the way, they're doing the same thing to you. You are both evaluating on whether or not you should be doing business together, and then you're negotiating whether or not you will become a partner of theirs or they a customer of yours, and then you will win or lose that deal. So this also I'll make available after the webinar. All these tools are available. I'll show you where to get them. But so to have a sales engagement process that works with you and for you, it used to be 60, 70 steps. Today it's 3. And there are some sub-steps in there, but know where you are so that you don't have someone running into your office, or if you are that young salesperson who got an RFP that's 3 feet thick and landed on your desk, don't think that you've got a chance to win that. If you weren't there in the beginning, if you weren't there talking to the influencer, if you weren't there positioning your company in the beginning, if you weren't helping to help them with their problem, if you weren't teaching them when they were learning about how to do this, you're not going to win it because you filled out an RFP and got 12 people to work 3 days in a row. But just know that the engagement process is simple and it's repeatable. I love what Jack Welch said, and he said this probably 20 years ago. And this may be the only slide I'll read to you, but I love it, and it's one of my favorite quotes ever. A person has 2 things, time and reputation. Time is what you make it, person who shows up completely prepared, understanding what my needs are, and having a solution to fit those needs is the one that's going to win my business. That's powerful. This is a perfect time, I think, to reiterate for you guys that today's session isn't so much about a system. It's not a book that you can find or something that you can read. I just really want to encourage you to think differently about how you interact and engage with prospects. And the way to do that is by asking really, really good questions. And I'll talk about that in a moment specifically. Remember that they're empowered. Notice I did not say they're in control. While many clients are empowered and prospects are empowered with information, the source of the information may be bad. It could have come from another rep. It could have come from a competitor, a bad blog. They still need guidance. They just don't know it yet. By the way, if you want to test this one day, go to a party or hang around your house, get a large group of people and start having a conversation with someone, and then keep talking, but slowly back away from them. I promise you they'll follow you because you're in control, especially if you're asking good questions and they want to tell you that. So this is you. This is how I want you to think about what you do and how you do it. And with disaster recovery as a service and outages happening all the time and ransomware being one of the most important, deadliest things out there to big and small businesses alike, and being able to back up and get back up your data and applications and systems in the event of an outage. By the way, that's another thing I'll just share with you in terms of your new power as a more empowered salesperson. I think one of the things that we've been doing, and myself included, by the way, is talking an awful lot about disaster recovery, disaster, catastrophic failure. And it's kind of freaky for some people, especially if it's never happened. It's almost like, selling morbid death insurance to somebody who's 25 years old. They can't even imagine the concept. So maybe instead of talking about disaster recovery, maybe just have conversations and good questions around outages. What would happen if you had an outage? Sometimes it's not a disaster. It's not a flood or a tornado or a hurricane. It may just be that Joe was moving a server across the hall at the business and he dropped something. He didn't plug something back in, or maybe he tried to bring it back up and it wouldn't come back up. That's an outage, and that's a disaster. Trust me. So here's something that I'll give to each of you that you probably already know. This is more a validation of what you're doing really, really well than it is something that you learn. In terms of the contribution to customer loyalty, what customers think of you and how they think of you being a trusted advisor, someone that they want to do business with, it's not your price. It's not even the value of what you do. More than half the time, they will tell us this. And this, by the way, is a survey that I've been a part of a group that's run this for many, many years, and it always seems to be the same 5 or 6 points at the top. I want someone to offer me a different perspective on what I'm doing. I want someone to help me think about my business differently. I want someone to understand what the alternatives might be. Sometimes, by the way, guys, the alternative isn't in your building. And there's a time when you can tell someone, based on what you just told me, Laura, I don't think we can help you right now. Maybe down the road, but right now I'm going to suggest you do something else. They will answer the phone every time you call from then on. Help them avoid the things that are dangerous to them. Teach them new things. Be a good company to do business with. Ultimately, you will be the person that they talk about in their company. You'll have that support across their entire organization. So let's take it now to where the rubber meets the road. So I'm going to give you 5 questions or 5 question segments to ensure that you don't end up like this. When you're engaged in a conversation with your future dream customer, they already know why you're talking to them. They already know what you want. If they were going to be offended by you asking a few questions, they wouldn't be spending any time with you at all, trust me. The problem that most of us have with asking is that we don't believe we deserve what we're asking for. We don't believe that we've even earned the right to ask for it. If you're sincere and if you'll deliver what you say you will, it's okay to ask, I promise. You don't have to use tips and tricks and tactics or anything sneaky. You don't have to take something that you read in some outdated sales book and then read that script to them. You just simply ask. Maybe something like this. So, Lisa, I'd like to explore the possibility of working with you in this area because I believe we can really help you. Can we make an appointment to talk more about this next week? Or, I'd really like to work with you on this, Mark. I'm ready to start doing what we discussed. Is there anything else you need to see from us before you would be comfortable moving forward? See how easy that is? And you can write those down and ask them if you have to. Just ask. First, challenge what you believe it means to sell. It doesn't mean tricking people by being slick or persuading them with gimmicks. Then change the actions you take after you try on a healthier set of beliefs. Try this. Call someone who you know, who you believe you can help, and then try your darndest to help them. Try it in a safe environment. So question number one, ask yourself this. Are you solving a problem or an opportunity? Now, I'm not going to, again, not read this whole slide to you, but I'm going to read each of the last questions. So the gray areas are something for you to consider while you're talking to this potential future dream customer of yours. Or maybe it's a current customer and you want to talk to them about disaster recovery. So, Leo, in the event of an outage or a disruption to your business, what would happen? Then be quiet. Get your pencil, your pen, your crayon, whatever you write with, and get ready. Because Leo's going to tell you what would happen if something like that happened. By the way, the answer might be, well, nothing. We don't have anything that's critical. Nothing bad would happen. In fact, nothing at all. Well, you now know whether or not Leo is an opportunity for you around disaster recovery. Is the person you're talking to, are they even qualified? Now, this doesn't mean find the decision maker, find the economic buyer, find the ENTJ. It means, are you talking to someone who has the ear or who can mobilize others in the organization, and someone who can walk you through what's going on their end? So Jennifer, after an outage, how quickly do you need your critical applications and data back up and running? Again, she's about to give you 3 paragraphs of information or 2 words. If she gives you the 2 words, move on. What's the decision-making process? How do they make a decision? If they were to buy this, if it was free, and if you could install it in 0.2 seconds this afternoon, what then? What has to happen? So Bob, what's your timeline to implement a backup service like this? Let them tell you. Know this too, by the way. Even as few as 7 years ago, we talked oftentimes to the decision maker who told everybody else in the organization what they were going to buy. SAP understood this very, very well. They were renowned for walking into the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the board's office, and telling them what they needed. And then they pushed all that down to people running the organization. I was in Houston at the time when it was then called Houston Lighting and Power, now Reliant Energy. True story, SAP sold a $32 million ERP system to them that took 4 years to implement, and by the way, ended up not costing 32, but nearly $100 million. And it took them 9 years to get their time cards to work. Yeah, because one person made a decision. So today, the buying sizes are bigger. You go to trade shows. We were at a trade show recently, and there are 3 and 4 people walking around who is the buying committee. And maybe none of them have a C before their title. So the average buying group size is getting bigger. And so as that size of the customer buying team gets bigger, then less than half the time is the purchase going to happen on any time frame that you think it might. Bigger the team, slower the decision-making process. So question number 4, are you even selling to the right people? Who's helping you? Who's getting in your way? Is there somebody else that you haven't talked to that you know you should? So Connie, what backup solution are you currently using? Then wait. And then you have everybody in an organization. Typically for what we're doing and what we're selling, we don't have this many people in an organization. But seek out the one person in the organization who may be the most connected and can help mobilize. Notice I didn't say find the decision maker. Find the person with the money. Find the top dog. Talk to Vito, the very important top officer. No, I'm saying find the person who's connected the tightest in an organization and have your conversations with them. By the way, they may be the person most unlikely to give you any information at first, but asking good questions can get you there and can get you to the other people. So, 5th question, does everybody know what's going on? And I mean everybody on your team and everybody on their team. So Joe, are you interested in on-site solution or an off-site solution? The reason I ask is because if it's on-site, then we're going to have an appliance here on site. If you don't need something like that, we can just push everything to the cloud. At that point, you're already talking in some cool words that they like. By the way, when you get all 5 of these down, so I know what the process is. They are qualified. I've talked to all the right people. Everyone's in on this. I understand now exactly what needs to happen. There's one final, very, very important issue for you to understand. I'm going to give this to you now. It's the acronym AWOS. If you've never heard this and you're hearing it for the first time now, it's a very simple thing. Are we a fit? So if you have all those other 5 things in place, but you're not a fit for what they do or how they do business, or if you think that your company culturally couldn't handle them, be careful. So just very quickly, let's talk about the Are We a Fit call. These are some of the questions that you will want to know to determine if the person you're talking to, the organization you're working with, the entire culture of that organization, if you guys have a future together. How are you currently handling X? By the way, these are questions you can use in your current business. It doesn't have to necessarily be for disaster recovery or cloud backup. And how are you involved with it? If you can fix this one thing right here, where does that fall on your list of priorities? After you get all these answers, then I think it's a good time where you can say, hey, Sam, usually teams like to see a demo next. So what would you need to see specifically to determine whether or not we've got something here? And then again, pause and write. One of the hardest things to tell any salesperson, trust me, is to not sell. But that's exactly what you need to do when conducting an Are We a Fit call. The primary goal of your call here is to establish if there's a fit, not to sell, at least not yet. It's easy to get carried away with your usual sales pitch, but remember, prospects are following their processes too, right? They have a buying process. They may not have the advantage of knowing who you are, what you do, or even what their own pain really truly is. So the number one goal for your Are We a Fit call is this: have a plan. Have a plan. Even if it's just a rough outline of some basic questions, write them down. It'll give your conversation a direction and help you to determine if there's a need for what you offer. Having some of those questions prepared in advance will help you structure your call to find out if some of the key factors that we just spoke about are even really in place. And as a final lagniappe, as they say in New Orleans, in Louisiana, a lagniappe is just a little something extra for nothing. I'm going to give you a lagniappe. If I was only going to show you 2 or 3 slides for the entire webinar, this would be one of those 2 or 3. And this is around buying concerns. I told you that buyers have a process. Think of the way you buy a car or a washing machine. We typically think of what we need. So if you're reading this thing left to right, the level of concern over time and how things change. I know I need something. I'd have to have something to get me back and forth to work. I live 40 miles away, it rains often. I know what I need. I know it's not free. So those are my top 2 things I'm thinking about. Way down at the bottom, I don't know what it is. Is it a truck? Is it a car? I don't know what it is. Risk, I haven't even thought about that yet. I haven't even thought about it. But what I'm sharing with you here is by the time your prospects are aware that they need to do something, they have a true interest in solving that problem and you helping them, and as they evaluate their alternatives, including you, and they finally get to the last one, there's always that concern. Concern is not the first one. I know I need a truck. It can't cost any more than X number of $1,000, and that's it. And then pretty soon, our needs have gone down. Cost is the number one thing. Risk is beginning to show its face. And then at the very, very end, right when they're ready to cut the check, right when they're ready to do the deal, right when they're ready to talk about disaster recovery as a service or cloud backup, something's going to jump out of the shadow and bite them that they hadn't considered before. Oh, wait, you didn't tell me this. I didn't know this. I knew the price. I knew how much it would cost, but I didn't know that. Risk is the last thing that shows up. And it's oftentimes the one thing that wrecks your engagement. And maybe in a catastrophic way, you may not be able to recover from it. I'll use the truck example. So I know I need a truck. It can't cost more than this. Pretty soon I realize I'm going to buy a truck, and now I'm getting ready to do the deal. I'm getting ready to buy it. I'm getting ready to buy the truck. I'm so excited. I'm ready to sign the contract, and then I realize, oh my gosh, I don't have a garage long enough for an F-250. I can't fit this thing into my garage. I've even cleaned my garage out, getting it ready. I can't do this. So do you get a smaller truck, or do you get something else? But your deal has been wrecked. What I would encourage you to do, especially in your questions that you're asking people, ask a lot of these questions. Expose risk up front. If you can bring risk front and center at the very beginning when they're determining that they have a problem, and you're sharing with them the risks of making some of these decisions, you may set some wonderful landmines for your competitors. You may be seen as a trusted advisor to help them think about something that is not even in their mind right now. It's totally a latent pain, but you're bringing it front and center. And guess what else? If risk causes you not to win this particular deal, wouldn't you rather know it on day one, conversation 1 or 2, than 4 months later when it's in your pipeline, on your forecast, and your manager is expecting it to come in? So consider risk, consider what would happen, be a trusted advisor, and help your prospects and customers get there quickly. So that's a lot that we've covered in 40 minutes, guys, but we've only covered just the tip. There are a ton of resources. There's over 3,000 sales books available for you to read. 3,000. I'm not suggesting that you even read 10% of those. I don't know anyone who has. I've been doing this since, seems like forever. I think I've read most of them, but not 3,000. But guess what? The very best sales book that I would encourage you to read, to get to know, to use, to have in your sales library, you probably already have it. And in fact, you probably already read it. And in fact, somebody may have already read it to you. The single greatest sales book of all time to help you get around questions that get stuff done was written many, many years ago by Dr. Seuss. And I know many of you have read Green Eggs and Ham, but let me talk to you a little bit about why this is important and why I think it is. So you open the book, first thing right off the bat, Sam's been thinking about this. He knows who his dream customer is. It's a prospect. He knows him well. He knows everything about him. So Sam prepares a way to introduce himself. By the way, you don't see Green Eggs and Ham on page 1. You don't see features, functions, benefits, solutions. This is Sam just saying, hey, man, I want you to get to know me. I'm a cool guy. So he's trying to introduce himself, make himself different. Doesn't have to be the tallest, the smallest, the cheapest, the fastest, the bestest. You just have to be different. That's what Sam does. He introduces himself to try to establish some quick rapport with the prospect. And guess what we learned quickly, by the way, and if you've been in sales for as long as I have, you know this. These are the people that sick their dogs on you, turn the garden hose on you, hang up on you, cuss at you. As soon as you look like, act like, feel like, taste like, smell like a salesperson, your prospect does not like you. Page 2, in this story. And if you're sitting around at home in your home office, look up there. You got that book somewhere. Pull it out. See if I'm lying. The prospect says, he doesn't say, oh, I know that Sam. I've dealt with him before. I know who that Sam works for. I know his company. I know what he's doing. First thing he says is, I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy because he sounds like a salesperson. Undeterred. And by the way, there's a difference between persistence and annoyance. Undeterred, Sam says, all right, let me find some creative way. Hey, do you like Green Eggs and Ham? Do you like this solution? Might this work for you? Prospect says, no, I don't like them. I don't like them at all. Undeterred, Sam says, all right, I have a buy or die philosophy. I'm going to continue calling on this guy because I know we're right for each other until he finally buys from us or one of us dies. But I'm going to do it, look down the lower left. I'm going to do it with a smile on my face. I'm going to do it in a way that makes it interesting. By the way, notice that the prospect is not saying, get the heck out of here. Don't ever come back. Don't darken my doorstop. He's saying, no, I don't like it yet. I don't like it at all. I may not even like you, but he hasn't said go away, and Sam, undeterred, is still trying to find new ways to sell this to his prospect. In fact, he even thinks, hey, I know that I've seen my prospect in a box before. I know he likes hanging out with foxes, so let me try a referral. Let me bring a referral. Let me bring a new way of thinking things. Let me try an out-of-the-box way of talking to this guy. And he still tries it. And after many, 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 many ways and many creative dialogue, at the very end of our story, the prospect doesn't say, I give up, I'm out, I'm done, I tap out. He finally says, okay, I will. You've convinced me, I'm going to try it. And then the end of our book is the prospect doing and saying what all good prospects will do and say to you when you are persistent, when you are true, when you are honest, and when you help them, when you get to the point where they now become a customer, just like Sam's new customer, he says, you know what, you're right, I do like this. And the very last thing he says, remember the very first thing he said before he ever even knew Sam was, I don't like that guy. The last thing he says is, thank you. Thank you, Sam. So remember this, guys. Selling is a process. It's not an event. It's not a webinar. It's not a book. It's not something you go to. Dave Sandler was famous in the early 90s for saying, you can't teach a kid to ride a bicycle in a seminar. That's not the attempt of today. That's why I have all these resources available for you. We will continue to grow, and we will continue to nurture one another and mature in the process. But as the buying process continues to change, we have to keep up with it. And the best way to do that is not learn something new, not read a new book, but find a better way to engage in those conversations. There are a ton of us out there. There's more than you can ever imagine trying to sell and compete and take away your customers. They're everywhere. All you have to do is find a way to be different. Distinguish yourself, and the way you can do that most of the time is by asking really, really good questions and then following up and getting good information back to those questions. Here's the slide I told you. By the way, we could have kept our webinar to about 30 seconds long if I would have just said this. Here it is. In a slide, these 4 points. Number one, ask questions. Write them down. Have a good idea of what you're trying to solve. Don't lead with your solution. Lead to it by asking good questions. Listen carefully to what they're saying. Write down their answers. Sometimes you take a nugget out of there that you never thought you would uncover because you ask questions. And take copious notes. Have good information to help you. And then do what you say you will do. That's it. That's it in a nutshell. So all of the resources that I just talked about briefly in our short time together, a sales engagement process, a complete list of open-ended discovery questions, tie-downs, little questions that will help improve your close rates and keep you engaged in the conversation, questions that will move your conversation from qualifying and evaluating and negotiating, helping you move along in that way, and ultimately questions for you to position disaster recovery as a service in cloud backup and the products that we're selling through InfoScale. And then even a complete sales pursuit process guide. I've taken all this and built a complete guide for you to use freely. Copy it. I don't think I've ever been the author of anything too much original. Feel free to cut and paste and copy, and you're not even stealing it from me because I got it from better, smarter people myself. But a complete sales pursuit process guide is available to you. Additionally, for all of the webinars that we've done up to this point, we had one webinar where we introduced the relationship to products from InfoScale. Then we had a second webinar on disaster recovery as a service, and even included some product training in there. A third webinar on cloud backup. And what's the difference between disaster recovery and cloud backup? We had a fourth webinar that Bill King led that talked about how to position all of this. What's the pricing? How do I partner? How do I package, promote? How do I do all that? So there was a really, really good webinar that Bill put on how to put all this together and use it and get paid in your company. Last week, Tanya and James from Plus One Strategies talked about how to take all of these things and now navigate the environment, your environment, and then speak to and engage with customers and prospects in your area in the way that you like to. In fact, with your own colors and branding and everything about your world. And all of these are available in 3 discrete areas, but all these areas are all tied in. On Facebook, you can go to the Codero channel. Just ask to become a member, and you will be. And everything that we talked about, all of these archived elements, all these other things are all there as well. If you're not a Facebook person, but you're a LinkedIn person, it's the Codero channel. Go to the Codero channel on LinkedIn, and you'll find all these same pieces of information. By the way, in both those areas, feel free to start a question and answer session. If you have something that you don't know, put an answer down. They are being monitored every day, and we'll get your answer to you either through Facebook or LinkedIn or directly to you. And third, and certainly not the least, on Codero.com, we have a section we call Perk. You'll see it in the upper left-hand side of your navigation bar when you go to Codero.com. That Perk is our Partner Enablement Resource Center. Everything that we've done up to this point, all new information, how-to videos, all kinds of things are there for your use as well. So don't be bashful about if you like using Facebook, go there, LinkedIn, go there. Certainly you can pull down all the information through our Partner Enablement Resource Center on Codero.com. So that's it. It's really just the start, but it will at least get us going for the next foreseeable future. So with that, I am going to open this up for questions. I see we've already got a couple of questions that came in. Again, over on your left-hand side of the navigation bar, or wherever you have that GoToWebinar element, that little app there, there's an area there for questions. If you want to type in a question there, I'll answer it in real time. We've already got a couple. So let me address a couple of questions that have already come in. So here's a question. Rick, how do you feel about sales scripts? Well, I'll tell you this. The one thing that most salespeople lack more than anything is the ability to sell with confidence, right? But where do you get that confidence from when it doesn't come naturally? What if I'm just a customer service rep and now I've got to be in a sales role or feel in a sales role? So I would say this. You do get it from a prepared outline of any kind of a call. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that you write down a script and then you call someone and then you read it verbatim. We all know that. We've dealt with that, and it is not fun. In fact, it's painful for both people. You don't have to read it, but you do need to have a beginning and a middle and an end to your outline, and then peppering that with questions really kind of direct the course of where you're going. Okay? So again, you don't need a script, but you need an outline of where you want to take this call. So here's another question. So let me read this right here. Shouldn't you direct the conversation you're having to your product or service? That's a good question, and I would say that many people don't realize this, but the person who asked the question is usually the person who actually controls the conversation. In fact, when you ask a prospect for more information or for an opinion or a suggestion, your question will almost always evoke an intuitive, honest, natural response. So don't get crammed into or hijacked into talking about features and functions. Continue to have a good conversation, because ultimately you don't have to lead with your product, but ultimately you're going to lead to it. So don't get one too early. By the way, as a result of asking a series of good, sincere questions, you subtly lead anyone that you're talking to into what you really want them to discuss. So you're already going there. So I see okay, here's another question. And it comes from one of our other partners. So what's the best way to start asking powerful questions? So here's what I recommend. I recommend starting slowly with easy questions. By the way, just like you would with a new friend, someone you just met at a barbecue, ask each question in a gentle, genuinely sincere tone of voice. Be direct, be to the point, and give them ample time to respond. This will provide the tone and the direction of the conversation you want to have. And by the way, never ask a sensitive question that may embarrass or threaten the person you're talking to. Remember that they just might be the person who made that last poor decision for their company. You don't want to insult them. You want to help them do something better. Okay, so I believe, unless we have any other questions, I believe that is it. And I'm going to make one adjustment to my slide. I was wrong when I took the chat that came in. The question for snake oil was actually answered at 10:10 a.m. A lot of you got in, but Darlene Howell got in first. So Darlene, look for a $50 Amazon gift card coming your way within the next 30 minutes. Sorry, Bill, you were on chat. Darlene was on question, and I wasn't looking there, but there it is. So congratulations, Darlene Howell. And thank you guys very, very much. It's been a wonderful 6-part series. Everyone from our team at Infrascale to Bill King and Maureen Curtin, who has done, again, just a fabulous job putting all this together. Believe it or not, I'm standing right now, and I'm giving her a quiet golf clap standing ovation. Maureen, thank you very, very much. Bill, I would encourage all of you guys, if you haven't seen Bill King's pricing, packaging, promoting webinar, please go to one of those 3 places I sent you to and look at that. A lot of your answers are there. Again, if you have any questions on how to do this in your local market, Plus One Strategies is there to do anything from radio ads to billboards to scripts to to bill stuffers, to slicks, anything you want, they will do that for you in your brand, the same look and feel of your company. With that, I'm going to say so long. Thank you guys very, very much. We're out of time. Have an awesome day. Make today great, and I look forward to seeing all of you very soon. Take care.